Hello again, dear fellow YouTubers from Metro Manila, the Philippines, Southeastern Asia, and happy Thursday to all of you. The increasingly embattled British Prime Minister and Conservative leader Theresa May is under an increasing pressure to resign. She has recently proposed or endorsed a second referendum on Brexit, that is Britain's decision to leave the European Union, because the deal that she negotiated over several months through her fellow cabinet ministers with the European Union until now has not been accepted by the British House of Commons. According to the Guardian newspaper, senior cabinet members call on her to pull planned vote on a withdrawal agreement bill. This report was contributed to or written by Heather Stewart, Rajiv Syal, and Rowena Mason for the British Guardian newspaper. It was published yesterday on May the 22nd, 2019. And obviously, I do not intend to infringe on any copyrights with this article, but rather to make its possible viewers, the possible viewers of this video, think more serious about these questions, of course, about May's succession issue. Former British Foreign Secretary or Foreign Minister, if you prefer that term, Boris Johnson is reported to be one of the leading contenders for the prime ministership and, of course, the Conservative leadership. In Britain, there is no general party convention held in the Conservative Party whenever its leader is under a leadership challenge or has decided to resign and a new leadership election is held. Rather, the caucus or parliamentary group of the Conservatives in the House of Commons will vote on the leadership candidates, and then, at least traditionally, in order to win on the first round, the successful leadership candidate has had to have an overall majority of 15% or 57.5% of all Conservative members of the House of Commons, even those who either abstain or spoil their ballots or are absent. This rule prevented Britain's first female Prime Minister, Margaret Thatcher, back in November 1990 from defeating her leadership rival Michael Heseltine outright on the first round of voting in November 1990. She fell 4 votes short of the required majority because of abstainers and possible absentees. At first, she decided to stand also for the second ballot, but then she took the step of discussing the matter privately one by one with her cabinet ministers, and most cabinet ministers implied that they doubted she could win. The first one to see her, Kenneth Clark, bluntly told her that should she stand on the second ballot, she would lose severely to Mr. Heseltine. So, seeing her support evaporate even among her cabinet colleagues, she decided to resign, rather than risk the humiliation of being ousted by her fellow members of the House of Commons. In Australia also, at least the centre-right Liberal National Coalition has the same caucus procedure, and that has forced more than once an incumbent Prime Minister to resign. For example, Kevin Rudd, Tony Abbott, and Malcolm Turnbull were ousted in this way. But now to the article. Theresa May faces the stark choice of quitting or being turfed out of Downing Street by her own party after Andrea Leadsom resigned from the cabinet amid a furious backlash against the Prime Minister's new Brexit deal. Well, history buffs like me might see a parallel between Miss or Mrs. Leadsom's resignation and that of Sir Geoffrey Howe, which happened just weeks before the open leadership challenge of Mr. Heseltine. And then the resignation speech that took place 12 days after Howe had submitted his resignation also was a kind of epitaph and a sad and negative epitaph on the 11.5-year prime ministership of Mrs. Margaret Thatcher. Leadsom quit on Wednesday evening, May the 22nd, 2019, using her resignation letter to attack the ill discipline of her cabinet colleagues and warn that she no longer believed its approach would deliver on the referendum result. As leader of the House of Commons, she had been expected to give details on Thursday, today, May the 23rd, 2019, of how the government intends to proceed with the withdrawal agreement bill, support for which continued to drain away on Wednesday. Leadsom's departure came after the embattled Prime Minister agreed to a pivotal meeting on Friday with Graham Brady, the chair of the Backbench 1922 committee, so named because in 1922, the Liberal Prime Minister David Lloyd George, who had been in a coalition government with the Conservatives in 1916, was forced to resign in this way. Incidentally, the Conservatives were already a much larger party than the Liberals back then. Following European elections, which start today and will conclude on Sunday, May the 26th, 2019, that are widely expected to see the Conservatives trounced by Nigel Farage's Brexit party. This prompted speculation on Wednesday night that she would announce the date of her departure as early as Friday. Graham hinted that he expects her to resign. We all expect her to resign. We just wish we could do it before recess, said one MP on Wednesday evening. MPs are due to leave Westminster on Thursday and not return until June the 4th. On a day of high drama in the corridors of Westminster, where Tory MPs met to decide May's fate, there was a growing chorus of calls for her to drop the withdrawal bill and quit before being forced out. Sajid Javid, David Mondale, and Penny Mordaunt privately signaled their unhappiness about her most eye-catching pledge, a vote on whether a second Brexit referendum should be held. The first one was held back in June 2016, and a narrow majority of the British voters participating, 52%, voted to leave the European Union. Others, including Michael Gove, believe it would be impossible to win a majority for the bill and have suggested the promised vote on it in early June should be pulled. Leadsom told colleagues at a meeting of the so-called Pizza Club of Cabinet Brexiters on Wednesday morning that she was considering resigning, but none of them suggested they follow suit. May declined to schedule meetings with several cabinet ministers, including Javid and Mondale, who had planned to express their displeasure at her pledge of a vote on a referendum. Former Conservative leader Ian Duncan Smith told ITV, "The sofa is up against the door, she's not leaving." But long before she stood up to present the new Brexit deal to MPs on Wednesday, it was clear that it had failed to win over the Labour MPs she had hoped to tempt, while alienating a string of Tory backbenchers and infuriating several key cabinet members. Julian Smith, the chief whip, went into the meeting for 2 minutes, at the meeting of the executive of the 1922 committee. Those present said he reiterated that May was not going anywhere. After meeting the executive for 45 minutes, or after the executive had been meeting for 45 minutes, forcing MPs, peers, and journalists to wait in the corridor, MPs were invited in for a 2-minute meeting and briefed on Brady and the executive's plan. One 1922 committee source said the executive had agreed in principle on a rule change that could allow May to be toppled, but had then placed the decision in a sealed envelope. Writing to Leadsom after her resignation, May said she was grateful for the support you have given over the last 3 years, but disagreed with her assessment of the government's approach. "I do not agree with you that the deal which we have negotiated with the European Union means that the United Kingdom will not become a sovereign country," she wrote. Labour seized on the chaos in the Conservative Party to renew its calls for a general election, as a parliamentary election is called in the British political vernacular. Party chair Ian Lavery said, While the Tories are ripping themselves apart, our country is in crisis. The government has made a catastrophic mess of the Brexit negotiations. Our steel industry is under threat, and universal credit is pushing people into poverty. For the sake of the country, Theresa May needs to go, and we need an immediate general election. The Downing Street number 10 sources were, however, still adamant on Wednesday that the withdrawal bill would be published on Friday, that is on May the 24th, 2019. Since May announced her 10-point plan in a speech on Tuesday, dozens of her own MPs who supported her deal in March 2019 have said they cannot support it, leaving her increasingly isolated. The Labour leader, Jeremy Corbyn, robustly rejected May's 10-point plan and called for a general election to resolve the deadlock. May's spokesman insisted she would not bow to pressure to resign immediately, saying she knew there was a job of work to do to persuade MPs to back her deal. Asked whether the Prime Minister would quit if the Conservative vote fell below 10% in the European elections, he said, "We expect a very challenging night when the result comes through, but no, the PM is focused on the task at hand." Stay tuned.